Here are the key themes for the short story The Telegram by Iain Crichton Smith. The Telegram explores a number of different themes. Here is a quick overview of some of the main ones. 1. Life in a small rural community. Several familiar aspects of life in remote rural communities, not just in Scotland but anywhere, are explored in the Telegram, such as the pettiness and gossip. Did you hear? The suspicion with which newcomers are viewed, even after being there for 30 years or so. The prejudice. I just thought. The dominance of the church. In desperation, the fat lady prays, "Oh God, save my son," 3 times. And the inhabitants' inability to make sense of things happening in the distant outside world, as suggested by what the war had to do with them, the people of the village did not know. 2. Loss. Fearing and/or experiencing it. Ways of dealing with the fear of loss constitutes a significant theme in the Telegram, as does the impact of the actual experience of loss. Crichton Smith's device of using the elder clad in black and holding the much-dreaded yellow telegram is used as a symbol of impending doom. Just as he does at the outset of the story by using the bird imagery to highlight the physical differences between the women, Crichton Smith uses contrast here once again to reveal how people respond differently when they are afraid they are going to lose a loved one. While the fat woman eventually gives in to her fear and cries, despite not wanting to in front of that foreigner, the thin woman maintains her self-control, with her lips pressed closely together, even when it seems to both women, and indeed to the reader, that it must be her son who has drowned. When the elder walks straight on past the thin woman's house, and we finally learn that the telegram was directed to him, suddenly the focus of the story changes from the different ways that people react when they fear loss to the ways in which loss impacts someone who actually experiences it. In this case, the elder, who is devastated by news of the drowning of his own son. The powerful language used in the final paragraph to describe the effect of the telegram on the elder leaves the reader in no doubt about the destructive nature of war and the suffering endured by all the families everywhere who either fear or experience loss. Indeed, so dazed is the elder at the news of losing his son that he walks 6 miles before he is stopped because he didn't want to go home and tell his wife what had happened, no doubt knowing what it would do to her. 3. Sacrifice. The theme of sacrifice is examined in the story in different ways. One of these ways is the personal sacrifices that the thin woman makes over many years to give her son the best opportunities in life by encouraging him to stick in with his studies, get an education and go to university. We learn that the local teacher advised her to send her son to university because he's got a good head on him, but that she had to save every penny and even knitted trousers for him. Personally, I can't imagine that woolly trousers would be particularly comfortable to wear. The thin woman expresses disdain not only for the fat woman but also for the other women in the village because they aren't prepared to make similar sacrifices for their children. They, in turn, consider her to be snobbish for wanting the best for her son. The irony is that after all the sacrifices the thin woman has made for her son, she realises he may get killed in the war, or might never come back to the island and repay her kindness by looking after her. Another type of sacrifice explored in the story is the sacrifice made by the young men of the village who have had to leave their homes and their families to fight in the far-off war, often paying with their lives. Early in the story, we learn that many of its young men had been killed or rather drowned when talking about the village, highlighting the fact that millions of those fighting in the Second World War sacrificed their lives for their country. 4. Destructiveness of war. The theme of the destructiveness of war ties in with the themes of loss and sacrifice and is introduced early in the telegram with references to wartime, the Bismarck, a mighty German battleship that sunk a British ship during the Second World War, and the eponymous telegrams of the story's title, which broke the news of dead sons or husbands. We're also told that the sailors from the village perished in seas that they had never seen apart from on maps at school. This highlights that while the war was being fought many miles from this small, remote village, the effects of the war still impacted the community deeply. 5. Prejudice. Each of the women is prejudiced and makes assumptions about the other, not based on evidence. The fat woman dislikes the thin woman because she still sees her as an outsider in the village, despite the fact that the thin woman has been there for 3 decades. She also considers the thin woman to have airs and graces and to be ambitious because she sent her son to university, and sips her tea with her little finger elegantly curled in an irritating way. She sees this as showing the thin woman to have ideas above her station. The fat woman claims that the war experience is different for the officers, implying that they are not exposed to the same dangers as an ordinary seaman such as her son. She's then confused when the thin woman challenges this comment by pointing out that her son, a sub-lieutenant in the Navy, is still on the ship. In other words, if the ship were to be sunk in a battle, all the sailors on board would most likely be lost, whatever their rank. Evidently, the fat woman's resentment about the thin woman's son's superior rank has clouded her logic. Meanwhile, the thin woman is also prejudiced in that she looks down on the fat woman, whom she considers to be very stupid. In fact, she describes most of the village women as being large, fat, and lazy. Great example of the power of three. This shows that she stereotypes them, assuming that they are all the same as the fat woman. In her opinion, these other women could have better afforded to educate their children than she could, given that she's living off 10 shillings of widow's pension that she receives weekly. The thin woman is also prejudiced against the English girl that her son has met down south, saying she's sure that the girl smokes and drinks. This seems rather harsh, considering she doesn't even know the young lady in question and is basing her opinion on sheer speculation. The reality is probably that she dreads her son marrying an English girl, shock horror. Her comment clearly reveals the prejudices that sometimes characterise a small rural community mentality. 6. Changing relationships. The relationship between the two women, which has been tense and strained for decades, appears to change momentarily when they share the fear that their respective sons might have been killed. When the thin woman first puts her arm round the fat woman to comfort her, and then the fat woman suddenly understands the sacrifices that the thin woman has made to allow her son to go to university, this demonstrates how sharing traumatic experiences can draw people together and promote mutual understanding. However, at the end of the story, it appears that the temporary rapprochement ends once they discover that neither of their sons has perished, which is disappointing but possibly true to life. The other relationship change that is alluded to is that between the thin woman and her sub-lieutenant's son. Having sacrificed so much for him, the thin woman now feels he's slipping away from her. Even if she doesn't lose him to the war, he may never come back to the island, and he may marry a girl from the other end of the country. Thank you for watching this video, and hope you find it useful. See you next time. In other videos on the Telegram, we look at an overview and key quotes from the story. If you found this or any of our other videos useful, it would be great if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for your support.